Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited to have two fantastic guests joining us today from OpenTech Alliance. We have Kimberly Robinson, who serves as VP of Marketing at OpenTech, where she oversees US-based marketing and supports their global marketing efforts. Very most notably, especially in context of today's conversation, Kim's been instrumental in developing their self-storage data white paper, which is really an invaluable source of information for operators and anybody in the self-storage ecosystem across the country and across the globe now. We're also joined by Justin Johnson, one of the product managers at OpenTech Alliance. Justin has been with the company for 13 years and currently focuses on their smart lock solutions, though he also works across all of the product lines. His extensive experience really gives him a unique perspective on the evolution of technology in the self-storage industry, and I think you're going to see that a lot throughout this conversation, his expertise shining through. Today we'll be deep diving into their recent partnership with us at SteelBlue, discussing their innovative smart lock line, and exploring the wealth of data of insights from their 2025 white paper. We'll also touch on automation trends and a little bit on the Internet of Everything platform, and just really what the future holds for the self-storage business as a whole. And so let's jump right in with Kim and Justin from OpenTech Alliance. Let's go. And so, I think before we dig into any of this, if we can just talk about, Kimberly or Kim, what do you do at OpenTech? And then same thing for Justin.
Sure, yeah. Kim or Kimberly is fine, not particular in that regards, but I am our VP of marketing, so I oversee most of our US-based marketing as well as support our international global marketing as well. And I have been super fortunate since I started to work on our self-storage data white paper. So it was a really cool introduction to our products, to our industry. I work with each of our product managers now that we have those. That's been a cool evolution. To really dive into that data and figure out what we have learned or what we have access to through all of our solutions that might be beneficial to our operators. So that's just a little bit about me.
I'm Justin Johnson. I'm one of the product managers here at OpenTech. My lights just turned off in the office, so that was fun. I, I dabble a lot in all of our products. My main focus right now is the smart locks. I've been with OpenTech about 13 years. I've seen a lot of cool things take off and develop here. So it's been a pretty good journey to get to this point that we're at right now with a lot of our technology. We have a lot of great backing from our marketing team. Our product team is very strong, and so we're always out there just trying to see what else we can do, where we can innovate, what we can do more of.
Before, we dig in talking about the white paper, and the white paper is just full of all this really useful data. All this data comes from your product lines. And so I just would like a preview of what are really the flagship products that you offer, because there's quite a few.
Yeah, sure. So we cover a range of technology and automation, right? Everything that we offer is essentially designed to help operators run their businesses more efficiently, grow their revenue, or serve their customers better. Those are kind of the three tenets that everything is built around. We began with kiosks, which is probably what many people know us for back in 2003. We got a patent for those and started rolling those out and really quickly discovered they needed some human support behind them, which led to the introduction of our call center solution, which fields both the video calls on kiosks as well as supports just general calls for operators. One thing that we're probably most known for came out back in 2018, and that is our access control solution, CIA. A lot of people lose the OpenTech brand and just kind of know us in that regards. And we'll talk more about this later, but it was one of the biggest catalysts for the evolution of the white paper and the data that we have access to. Another solution that is pretty well known, but a lot of people don't know that we're a part of, is Storage Treasure. So that online auction platform, we have owned and managed that for, I want to say 8 years now, back since 2016. Don't test my math, so 9 years. We've got others, right? We have an AI security monitoring solution. We have recently rolled out smart locks, which I know Justin is very proud of and is going to share more about. And then we have a whole host of other sort of smaller supporting solutions. But I would say that's probably the core.
Excellent. And yeah, so, talking about Insomniac Smart Locks, I got to see it at the trade show. We had it in our booth. I know Bray put together a really cool display with it on there. And we can really tell that it was designed for the user, keeping the user in mind. And I think, Justin, if you could just talk to us a little bit about what it was like to develop it, and what are some of the key features that you're excited for the operator at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's definitely been a labor of love. This product, I mean, really, the development of it spans back about 7 years, 6 or 7 years. So I was not necessarily part of the product team at that point, but I was around for our initial rollout, doing support and a lot of training around it. I think it took us a while to get to the point where we were ready to bring something that was innovative and competitive to the market. There's really been an arms race the last few years as far as electronic locks and smart locks go. As you can see by Bray's wall that you just mentioned that you have at your booth, right? There's a lot of different options that are out there based on what was available at the time and what the operator wanted. What we bring to the table, I think, is a lot more accessibility for the tenant. So one of the most standout features of that smart lock is our touchpad. So even if if the tenant doesn't have an app or they don't want to use an app, they can still get into their unit. We don't force anybody to interact with our products a certain way. We want to make sure that we meet them where they're at. So if they don't want to download an app, or maybe they don't, in this day and age, forbid they don't have a cell phone for some reason, they're still able to interact with the property, get into their unit, and not have to worry too much about about interacting with it with a way they don't want to. The other really key benefit is on the operations side. Storage facilities are pretty notorious for having poor cellular reception, having poor internet connection, and so our locks can actually operate while the internet is down because we store a lot of our data on the lock itself, and it's all encrypted. But if the internet's down, a tenant can still walk up, punch in their code, and get into their unit. It doesn't have to talk to the cloud and come back down and check with this service. It doesn't have to do all of that. And I think those are two of the really big things that have helped us really get ahead in the market with the smart locks. I could talk about it for hours, but I think those are two of the really big sticking points as far as the tenants' interaction and their adoption of the technology in the market. It's just been ease of use and convenience.
I think another sticking point on those has been just generally from what we've heard about, the marketplace on these is the battery life.
Yep.
And was that an obstacle you guys had to overcome with these as well?
I think that was the big bulk of it, was how do we develop an efficient piece of technology that doesn't consume a lot of battery life. And we get about 6 years worth of battery life out of our battery packs. They're just double A's. We don't use lithium ion. We don't use really expensive proprietary batteries that you have to replace in a year or 2 years. It's very much off the shelf Duracell double A batteries. We're seeing 6 years. That's the number that I can safely promote. Really, the batteries themselves, depending on what quality of battery life you have, you could get even, or what quality of battery you buy, you could get even more out of it. So that's something that we're really proud of, and I think is a big talking point as we're working with operators, because it really brings down kind of the total cost of ownership of that lock. They're not having to go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars every couple of years on batteries.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Bray? What's your take on the partnership and their lock? That I know you got to experience it yourself as well.
Thanks, Justin and Kim, for participating. We are excited about the future opportunities that we have to work and collaborate together. So super stoked about it. Yeah. So, I was fortunate. I got to go out and visit OpenTech last year. Robert and team there just kind of walked us around and showed us some of their features. And look, I'll be honest with you, as a product engineer and individual, some of it was very, very impressive. Like, I didn't know that technology existed without having, dove into the deep end, so to speak, to get immersed in some of it. So it was very, very impressive. And I can see as the market's trending and shifting in a direction to where all the technology and the capabilities to being able to show trends and how things are utilized, that is becoming more and more prevalent in the market every day, right? I mean, it's like Excel sheets on steroids now, right? We just data junkies. Every decision we make is driven off of data. And so that actually brought up a question. I'm curious. Sorry, Jared, I hope this is interactive. So I'm curious, Justin, your reference to the keypad, I think that's a great feature in being able to access that regardless of what the outside world for lack of a better term, is doing with internet and service and whatnot. Do you have data to show how many users are using the keypad feature as opposed to the Bluetooth, or not necessarily Bluetooth, but whatever the smartphone app feature is? Do you have data to show what the percentage of usage is there? And I'd be curious to see if that's driven even geographically. I'm from the South, and we're kind of touchy feely. We want to be able to put a key in it, or type in a code, and
Yeah.
and so I'm just curious if that data exists, and what's that look like? How do you guys know what your best solution is?
So we do have that data. I think a lot of it is still kind of in its infancy right now as more of the
Okay.
market starts to adopt the locks. Our sample size is relatively low. I think that on the last time I actually went through and looked at that, probably about 20 to 25% of users, or sorry, of tenants, I should say, are actually interacting with the locks in that fashion. Um,
Okay.
Kim has done a big push on instructing operators and helping instructing tenants on how to use our mobile app, which is Storage Genie. And so what we're trying to do is add more features, make it more feature rich, add more functionality, to help drive more adoption of that by the tenants, because we rely a lot on the facility as well to
Mhm.
push that to their tenants. And if they don't have good collateral and they don't have a good grasp on how to lead them through that process, our numbers are not going to be very authentic. So yes, we do collect that data. It's something that we're harvesting. And I think as we get towards the end of 2025, we're going to have a much more realistic picture of what that means.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of new operators in the space that have done this. They're doing their very first build from the ground up, or maybe they're dipping their toes into a second facility. And so they're still kind of learning the world of self-storage in general and all the technology that's out there. And so as we lead them down these paths to use different technology, like our mobile app or the smart locks, they start to engage and learn what it means to engage with their tenants.
I'd love to chime in on this though. So Justin's super right. We don't have that for smart locks. We do have it for CIA. So that's one of the things that continues to jump out at me more and more every year as we put this white paper together. Our storage genie adoption has grown exponentially, and it's not a direct correlation to platform growth. Users are using it more, but it still only represents 14% of all gate opens. So that is one of the things that really drove our inclusion of the keypad on these smart locks. And we occasionally catch some flack for it because it does make them bigger. They're not as sleek and as small as some of the other solutions on the market. But it was driven by that tenant preference for that keypad, regardless of the availability of that Bluetooth app. You asked about regional data too. Again, we don't have it for smart locks yet because of the amount of solutions in the field, systems in the field. We do have it for CIA, and some of that is in the white paper. And you do see it kind of shift across different regions. The East Coast actually has more adoption of the mobile app than some of the other regions, as well as Europe. So this is the first year that we've been able to pull it out regionally. And I think it was London. London's about 64% of their users are utilizing the mobile app. So there's some drastic differences
Wow.
between our market here and the market overseas. And you can kind of see that regional breakdown if you want to dive into the data.
Yeah, and I think that's what you said, Kim. I think is wildly important. The fact that you used your data from CIA as part of your decision making process for your smart latch, that's relevant to how much benefit this technology brings. Right? It enables you, again. You have data to be able to make conscious decisions. Not, I hope it works. You know going in. Here's what our usability is going to be. Here's what our access is going to be. So again, kudos to you guys for generating that and having that forethought and mindset to be able to go out and bring something to the market that is going to be a success out of the gate, right? That's huge. So yeah, again, kudos to you and team.
I say it's one of the reasons it took us so long to come to market is because we wanted to do it right. So we
Sure.
took the time to learn, took the time to test and figure out, yeah, what do people want and what do people need to make the solution successful?
Cheers to
And
that.
yeah, cheers. And another kudos to you, especially, Kim, is, your white paper from 2025. And my favorite type of marketing is the kind that gives value for value's sake And I think I brought that up to you at the trade show as well. And so, this is something that you've undertaken for the past 6 years. It's been around even longer than that. And
Much
so,
longer.
I guess just go into a little bit of the history and how you kind of made it your own over this period of time. And yeah, I know that Justin loves to give you your kudos for this.
Yes, he's very kind. And I can take no credit for the idea behind why we have a white paper. This is something that Robert Cheedy actually introduced back in 2006. Now, we haven't done it every year. I think this is only our 14th edition. We've done it every year for the last 6 years. And part of that was really driven by the data we had access to. And that's really how I've been able to make my own. Obviously, I am a marketer, so I've wanted to kind of really ensure that it's the best representation of our brand and our products and make it really visually pleasing. But the first one that I did was in 2019, which means we were looking at 2018 data because we're always looking a year behind. And what came out in 2018 was our IOE platform. And that really forms the backbone of CIA, the backbone of our access control solution. And we developed that solution, yes, to address a lot of the issues with hardware and installation and support that operators were having, but also to really be able to add a layer of value in terms of the data that operators had access to, in terms of the access to their properties that they had or could have when they weren't there. And that was really one of the biggest catalysts for how I've been able to make this white paper my own, in a sense. We had so much more data. So it went from a 15-page document to a 40-page document. Yes, some of that is pictures, but a lot of that is the data that we had from the solutions that we developed or the solutions that we acquired. Storage Treasures is another one. We have so much data on that platform to really be able to share with operators how to manage their auctions better, to recoup more of that lost rent and lost revenue. So those are the biggest pieces for me. And I know as everyone continues to look at how do I add more value, how do I operate more efficiently, we have many operators that have begun using this data to achieve six-figure savings, to learn when they can potentially push rental increases. I know ECRI has been a huge topic for the last couple of years. They're being able to see when tenants are on property, how long they're staying, when they're calling to rent a unit, all of these different things that are going to let them either capture more revenue or improve the tenant experience, or, again, to that point, operate a little bit more efficiently. So it's been an exciting journey. And it's one that we continue to work on. So Justin and I have been having conversations for the last, I want to say, year and a half around what data do we or could we collect with smart locks that is going to add another layer of value for operators? What don't they already know from their access control solution? I think one example we landed on is how often people are visiting your property or visiting an operator's property and not opening their unit. Because if they're doing that, they're probably not there for a great reason. So it's been a great journey. And I mentioned earlier, we kind of have continued to add more product managers who really own these solutions and really are trying to understand how we're adding more value for the operator with them and with the data.
I think we're trying to really think ahead, right? As opposed to reacting to someone asking, do you have this kind of data? And go, well, let me see how we can put it together. We're trying to predict, things that we want to see to help drive the business and help drive the development. But what we think is going to be beneficial. Bray, you bringing up the request of saying, hey, how many people are using the app versus using the touchpad? That's something that Kim was like, hey, do we have something like this? And let me turn my light back.
It's rough.
The lights again.
There we go.
Oh, this is fun.
The upside is even if the lights go out, your product still works, right? So shameless plug right there.
You asking that question is like, well, it makes me feel good because I know that we're on the right track. Because people that don't have any involvement in what we're doing in our day to day are saying, hey, it would be cool if we knew what this data was. And so there's this constant evolution.
Yes, sir. And I think Kim hit on something that I as with you guys in marketing and product development, I know that there's a fine line in customer facing versus internal, what we do, right? At the end of the day, we're all salespeople, right? We're all promoting the brand that we represent and our partners. And so I think Kim hit on something there that I thought was very important. And it was the fact that this product was developed not only to help operators increase revenue, but also as a service to the tenant. Sometimes we lose focus on how does this help SteelBlue, right? Or how does this help OpenTech? or how does this help, the facility owner? And sometimes there's no weight added to how does it help the entire spectrum of people involved. And so the fact that you took into consideration what can we do to make the tenant that user a more user-friendly atmosphere, as well as increasing potential revenue for the operator, as well as how do we work with with our partners in the industry to put their product, our product on their doors, and vice versa, right? How do I sell my product with your product on our doors, right? It's all in service to the industry as a whole, not just an individual group, but the industry as a whole. And I think some of that's been lost over the years. So again, kudos to the team there at OpenTech for identifying how do we best service the industry, not just OpenTech, not just SteelBlue, just the industry as a whole. So again, I think there's a lot of value in that. So I appreciate, from a personal and professional outlook, I appreciate that focus and sensitivity to, again, the industry as a whole. So,
well, thanks,
we got to return that kudos, though, because your willingness to partner with us has helped us achieve that goal, right? By pre-punching your doors, we can deliver the solution that's going to work at the end of the day and on day one for the tenant, for the operator, and work the way it's intended.
Yeah, fine point, right? All the way down to the guys installing, the guys out in the field, the crews doing the physical and manual labor to get it done, right? They're part of the industry, and we as partners are trying to facilitate the best solution for everyone involved. So I love this, right? This is what I live for. So
we want to make it easy. And to echo what Kim said, our partnership and your willingness to collaborate with us on that is what helps. It is going to help. I've installed thousands of these things myself. And let me tell you, drilling holes for that long in a door in 120-degree heat at a storage facility outside, it's not fun, right?
End of the day, you have to go get hand massages, right? Yeah, you're all cramped up. So
we want to make sure that we're cultivating all these relationships, not just with the operators who are buying it, but with our dealers, with our vendors, with our partners that are spread out all across the globe. Now, it's been really fun the last year or so as I've been kind of working on a lot of this to see how willing everybody is to collaborate and throw in ideas and just be part of the experience, right? Be part of making sure that we're all delivering a good experience to the operator, and ultimately the most important thing, the tenant, that they have frictionless experience with the facility.
So we've talked about this white paper, and the value that it brings to everybody. And I think there's so much data in it. And I guess from both of your perspectives, you've been in the business for a while. You've been working on this white paper for years now. And so what are some of the findings that really stick out to each of you that you think really matters to the operators?
For sure. I'll say, do you want me to go first, Justin?
No, yeah. So
I'll talk forever.
So my favorite things are really what kind of show tenant interactions at scale. So again, there's a lot of data. I picked a couple of points out, especially the first one focused around the kiosks. So as I've been a part of this organization for so long, and I've seen the evolution of our technology and the way that people are interacting with our products, it blows my mind to see numbers like this. So what stood out for me the most was exactly how many payments are being taken during office hours from a kiosk, right? So it's about 64% of tenants are choosing on their own to use the kiosk to self-service to make a payment, even though the office is open, even though there's somebody there. And there's a couple different reasons why that really resonates with me. One of them is because it really helps our narrative in that we provide solutions not necessarily just for automation, unmanned facilities. We are providing solutions that will help meet these tenants where they're at. Some of them don't want to interact with somebody. They don't want to necessarily call. They want to just stop by after work, walk up to a machine, put their credit card in, and they're done. So as I talk to operators a lot, they're like, well, we want to make sure that we hold on to that human element of our business. And say, well, you can. With a kiosk, you can have two-way video calls. They can call somebody at the headquarters for the operator. They can call our call center. Um, we have somewhere around, was it 320,000 calls from kiosks to our call center, or using live help is what we call it. And that shows that there is a good balance. It's something we've been talking about for years and years and years and trying to evangelize. Say there is a balance that can be struck with not having to have somebody sitting at the property 8 hours a day, but still getting that human element out of the business. And the fact that the public is kind of just showing us that on its own is great, because now we're not having to kind of put this idea into the operator's head to help them understand what could be possible. We can show them and go, this is what's happening. And I think that's really cool. The amount of payments and the amount of uses and touch points, they're going to fluctuate over the years, but there's been this steady growth for a long time of tenants just interacting on their own with the technology in lieu of necessarily needing to speak to somebody face to face. So I think that's really awesome. I know, Kim, you've got a lot to say.
I could definitely talk about the data for hours. I will not bore you in that regard. I do want to caveat that last number, though. We do have a few larger operators who have auto dial enabled, but it doesn't remove the point, right? So what auto dial means essentially is when somebody's opening the door to their rental office, it's triggering that call to an agent at either their call center or ours. But it is still enabling kind of that on-demand service that Justin mentioned. But it's not always necessarily the tenant hitting a button saying, hey, I need some help. A lot of times they don't want the help. And we've heard that from the operator. They're like, hey, I'm here to rent. I showed up. I just want to do my self-service transaction. And I think that's something that we have seen across the board when we look at our data every single year, is kind of that increase in tenants opting for self-service transactions. One that I love to look at every year is related to our call center payments. We took, oh God, I've lost the number, but we took, I think, over 380,000 call center payments last year. 88% of those, the tenant opted to fulfill their payment on their own. So via a self-service payment portal over the phone. They're still calling to make a payment, which still kind of flabbergasts me. You're picking up the phone and calling somebody to create or make a payment over the phone. But when they're presented with a self-service opportunity, they're taking advantage of it, which results in labor savings for the operator and a smoother experience for that tenant. Another one that I love, and this is kind of one of the, see, there's the bright light. This is one of those kind of more hidden data points. It's not one that I think many people look for, but it's one that I love year after year because I think it really speaks to that customer convenience, Bray, that you were talking about for that tenant. There's this feature called Text Me My Code, and that number has, the adoption of that feature has continued to grow year over year. Basically what it is, if a tenant rolls up to a storage property and they've forgotten their access code, which every time I ask this question at a trade show event, every single operator is like, yes, this happens all the time. They can punch in their cell phone number as long as it's in the property management system. They're going to get a text with their code and be able to get into the facility. What that's doing is removing that friction in the tenant experience. They don't have to find a number and call a manager. They don't have to hope that manager has access to that access code in that moment. They're not disrupting the operator's life if they're the one on call and it's 8:00 and they're, at dinner with their family. So it's really kind of full circle and made everyone's life easier. We had over, people used that over 240,000 times last year. Just again, forgetting their code. Super simple feature, but it's something that I think was one of those intentional pieces of the development of that product that was really designed to make both that operator and that tenant's life easier. Another fun one, and this is, I know kiosks can be polarizing. Not everyone loves kiosks, but they collect a lot of data that tell us a lot about how tenants are interacting with properties. And I have two related to kiosks that year over year kind of blow my mind. The first one is related to cash payments. And I know a lot of people do not like to take cash. We all want everyone to be on auto pay. You want to have that credit card locked in. This number actually grew last year to this year. 25% of people that are doing a transaction at a kiosk are paying cash. So when given the option, right, they're opting to use cash. Now, again, you may not want to offer a cash payment, that's fine. But I think it continues to come down to your ability to serve tenants where and how they want to be served. 25% of people still want to be able to pay cash, at least of those interacting with a kiosk. That second kiosk fun fact is related to, again, serving that tenant where and how they want to be served. A lot of people do continue to just show up at a property and expect to be able to rent. The question always comes down to, do you have a way to serve that tenant, whether it's a kiosk, whether it's an after hours call center or someone on call? Do you have great signage that directs them to, hey, this is how you make a rental when we're not here? In 2024, 76% of all kiosk rentals were purely walk up. So they hadn't called, they hadn't gone online and started a reservation. They just showed up at the property and said, there will be a way for me to get a unit. And if there wasn't, they're moving on to a competitor.
That number is shocking.
Yeah.
No. But it's important.
You said 76%?
76, yeah.
Wow.
That's nuts.
That means there's only 24% that pre-planned what they were going to do that day.
Yeah, but are you surprised by that at all? But I mean, you have to really put that into perspective, right? If that's 76% of walk-ups, and I know we're going to touch on this a little bit as we get towards the facility being accessible, but your average tenant is, what's the value in 2024? $1,600 is your lifetime value of an average tenant. That's a lot of money that's getting left on the table. So those statistics and being able to see those from the kiosk and put them out for everybody to really consume, like, that's huge, right? The amount of visibility is just mind-blowing to me.
I've heard you throw out a couple of numbers, big numbers, right? The 240,000, I think it was, and then 320,000 call center calls. And so I'm curious, how many, and I'm not going to hold you to this, how many kiosk interactions or technology interactions that OpenTech have in the full calendar year, like as a whole? Like, how many engagements were with your OpenTech products?
664,000.
Across
So,
all
when we talk about the data, right? It's not a small data set. It is, and it ranges across all different types of portfolios, right? We serve the largest REITs down to the single individual owner operator. So I know everyone kind of likes to say, I have my own secret sauce. I don't do it that way. This doesn't apply to me. And we love your secret sauce. And I think, yes, everyone does things a little bit differently, but somewhere in this subset of data, there is someone that looks like you. There's someone that operates like you.
Yeah, and again, that's the reason that I asked the question. When you have 660,000+ points of data, man, I'm like a kid in a candy store with that, right? I just, you're talking about pivot tables and whatever, just sorting stuff and just seeing what all there is there. Justin's phrase of swimming in the data. That would be fun, just to scroll through that and see, how many different configurations, how much data is there. Again, I think that's remarkable. 660,000 points of data.
Well, and I should caveat that too. That's transaction. So that's somebody actually conducting a point of business, purchasing something, making a payment. In terms of the data points, it's far more than that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that's not even counting accessing
right? Yeah.
Well, you want to look at access control. I mean, 2024, we had 40 million some odd gate opens, access opens, and that's just through storage.
That's just mobile.
That's just mobile. That's almost 1 billion opens since 2018.
Yes.
Yeah, and see that again, to my point, that's an enormous amount of data that you can trend and graph, and when you get that down to the macro level for an operator, so that they can see that data. And to your point, even if they still want the human interaction, right? I mean, some do that, right? That's their secret sauce, I think. Some still want that, but it would be beneficial to them to have the data to know when the peak times are to man that facility, right? And you can't do that. You can't do that to its full potential without the information that you guys provide. So, yeah, that's insane.
No, that's a great point, Bray, actually. If you're not answering your phones between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., you're missing the bulk of your rentals.
Yeah, see, that's true.
And Mondays is always a spike. I don't know if people just go to work and they're like, I don't want to work today. But every year we see a spike in rental calls on Monday.
It's because they clean the garage out over the weekend.
Fair
Yeah.
point.
Mondays and Fridays, and Fridays are payday, right?
Right.
You've always got to be staffed up on Fridays, or you're going to miss out on
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. Kim mentioned earlier, six figures.
There's a couple points that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I'm gonna loop something into my question about automation. So, Kim, I've been listening to your webinars on this for a few years, basically since I started working with SteelBlue 3 years ago as a vendor, and you guys were always like a information source. Some point that you brought up was that we're not very far removed from a period of time where there was literally almost no level of automation in this industry. And we're talking about if you do a percentage, you're talking about adoption over time. It's kind of exponential when you talk about how many years it's really taken. And so, I drive around this local area and I see nice new facility, and I'm like, oh, for sure, this thing's all suited up with the climate control and access control and all just the bells and whistles. And not far down the street is the facility that you can tell is from a different time period. And I think of myself as just being an end user. Which one would I go for? I know that maybe the newer facility might cost a little bit more, but is that little bit more going to give me a little bit of peace of mind? I think it does. So I think I would go for that. And so what I'm curious of is, where do you really feel like just automation in general is as far as adoption in the industry? How many non-automated facilities are there? And is, I guess, automation the standard now in your eyes? And then just real quick also, before we jump into this, is you said kiosks are polarizing. And I thought that was really interesting. So what's, polarizing about kiosks to folks? I'll just let you rip from here.
That was a lot of questions, but we'll get to them all.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with kiosks, which is kind of an interesting one. I do think it's polarizing because of that human element that people want to offer, right? They don't want to remove the human level of service that they feel their managers at the front desk. And so there's always been a little bit of a push and pull. And again, we've been providing kiosks specifically for self-storage for 22, almost 23 years now. So we've seen kind of the range of adoption over the years and the range of sentiment in the industry. And I think they've gained a lot of traction in the last 4 or 5 years. But you still have those operators that worry it's going to be a cold interaction. And the technology has really evolved to mitigate a lot of those concerns. We have that live help, video chat functionality. There are different ways that you can trigger that interaction, whether that's from a motion sensor that detects somebody in front of the kiosk and immediately connects them to a person, or a video loop that lets them know that help is there if they want it. So when I say polarizing, I think it comes down to people believing or not believing that transaction, that interaction is going to be just as good and just as high of a quality customer service experience as somebody standing behind their desk. And when you talk about kind of the adoption of automation over the last few years, and how, yes, and I think everyone in the industry would admit this, we are slower to adopt technology than many other industries. That catalyst, we all kind of know what that catalyst was back in 2020, the years we don't speak of, but COVID was a huge catalyst for technology adoption in this industry because we had to, right? You couldn't have somebody at your property. You had to limit human interaction or person-to-person interaction, right? Because when I say kiosks, I don't think they limit human interaction. I think they enable it on demand, as Justin mentioned before. But it was a huge catalyst. And you see those trends in our white paper. They're starting to fall off because we typically compare 5 years of data. Now, I'm really excited for the next evolution when we can do 10 years of data. It's coming soon, but you'll still see it. You'll see the drops in on-site visits. You'll see the drops in auctions, but you will see surges in self-service rentals. You'll see surges in kiosk adoption. And I think it was one of those things that we were kind of forced into. It's like Uber Eats and grocery delivery, right? We started doing it during COVID because it was our only option, but we've continued to do it because it was convenient and it saves us time. So just for, again, some of that perspective, when I started the white paper back in 2018, we were looking at 6,500 facilities on the OpenTech side. We always kind of split between OpenTech and Storage Treasures. This year, we were looking at just over 12,000. So in 5 years, we've just about doubled the number of operators that are using our solutions specifically. And I think Justin's got some thoughts on industry overall, but that's been, for me, again, I think the biggest catalyst and the biggest reason why our numbers have changed so much, and that adoption has continued to grow.
And there's just so much growth in the industry in and of itself. So 2022 to 2023, we saw construction spend increase 130%, 140% just overall in the industry. Even now, all the way through 2024, new construction is still up 30% from 2020, right? It's this really kind of encapsulating number when you think about it, because it's like, wow, that's still year over year growth for the past 5 years. Um, and a lot of these operators that are coming on, they're looking at automated solutions. The reason this question is a little bit tricky is because automation is kind of in the eye of the beholder. Unmanned facilities can turn into hybridly managed facilities very quickly. There's always a lot of movement. There's always a lot of trial and error, especially among the larger operators who may take a segment of their market and go, well, in these few states, we want to try to centrally managing everything from one location. Uh, I I think the cool statistics to look at, and I'm ripping this straight from ISS, is 25% of operators have implemented some sort of automation into their business, whether that's automated chat bots that are helping people go through a reservation flow or a move-in flow. It's implementing kiosks. It's implementing smart locks. It's utilizing a third-party call center to help take their calls during really peak or key times of the day, 10 to 1 o'clock, maybe when they're not going to be there to take payments. So I think you have to kind of sit back and watch a little bit. And as much as I know you want me to tell you that X% of this industry is fully automated and unmanned, it's too fluid, right? There's always movement. Someone's always trying something new. We have a lot of operators who are very quick on the uptake for new technology. It seems slow because they think about it for a little while and they build an infrastructure around it and they want to make sure they do it right. But when they're ready, they go all in, and it's been really cool to see a lot of that evolution over the past decade or so, as more and more operators who aren't just the REITs or the middle size, 50 plus facility operators. You're having brand new people come into the industry and go, well, I have this other business I'm running, or I have another job that I do. I want to make sure that my tenants can get automatic text messages, they can rent online, they can get their gate codes, they can navigate the whole process without me. And if they need me, they'll bring somebody else in, third party, to do it. So it's data that's difficult to pin down, but we're starting to see more and more operators be vocal about the types of automation that they're putting into place, which I think is really awesome.
I keep hearing this thing when I'm out talking to people in the industry about how they're using automation to let their staff work on their business, not just in their business, right? So it's
True.
that thing that enables your team to focus their time where it's going to add the most value for your operation, to grow your revenue, to ensure you're, fielding those lead calls. So I love that phrase, and it's one that's kind of stuck in my brain because it's what we do here, right? We've continued to invest in automation to let our people focus on adding value for operators, let them focus on those things that are going to help us grow the business, not kind of those day-to-day repetitive tasks that automation can enable and support. And I think when we talk about automation adoption, I don't think we're ever going to get away from people being involved in your business. I don't think that that's what any of us here at OpenTech are advocating for, or anyone in the industry is advocating for. It's how do you use your people and maximize their time to the best of their ability?
We've wrapped it up in a phrase we call operational efficiency, and we talk about that a lot in regards to smart locks. Do you want your facility managers, maybe they're managing 10 properties, maybe they're managing 2 properties, doesn't matter. Do you want them going around putting overlocks on doors? Or do you want them calling back leads? Do you want them, like Kim said, working on the business as far as just pure growth? Where do you want your team focused, and how can we help you put something in place to where your team can go focus on the important stuff and not necessarily the menial day to day?
I think that's important too, to realize what you guys did on the front end of making that automation less intimidating, more user friendly. I think is one of the drivers in the shift and the transition in the industry. Kim, you referred to the years that we don't talk about. That's part of it as well, right? When all of that came about, I think a lot of people were intimidated by some of the things that were out there and not as user friendly. And we've seen it in this industry, and we see it in other industries. Justin, earlier you talked about an arms race. We've seen it, as I said, in this industry and others, where because you want to be the first to get out there and put a product out, and if you don't do your due diligence on the front end to make sure that you're putting out a respectable product, man, that ultimately hurts you on the backside of things, right? It causes some stigmatism about I don't automation is not my friend. I lose this interaction or I lose that interaction. But having seen some of the service history and the records from you guys as to how you service the industry and your customers, it makes that transition so much easier and so much more effective. And I thought too, Justin, it just, driver in my mind, as you were talking about the industry and how it's still continuing to grow. I've been in this for 30 plus years, and I've been hearing how it's saturated, right? It's saturated. And if it ever actually gets to that point, I think that's, to Jared's point, you're going to see a lot of these older facilities modernize or transition into automation. And again, shameless plug here, that's the opportunity as well that SteelBlue and OpenTech have to work together, right? So we're facilitating your product on our door and vice versa, right? We are confident in the service that we provide as a solution. And so as these older facilities start to come online, right, we have the ability to replace doors with old locks on them that now have the OpenTech capabilities on it. So I think that's just another value add again to the industry as a whole. And so I'm excited to see what that transition looks like, right? As we start seeing, I mean, the industry, as I said, it's been insane. Right. I've been hearing my entire career that it's saturated, but yet it seems to be double-digit growth year over year over year over year. But I do think that there's some additional opportunities that we haven't really seen the dividends for, and updating and modernizing some of these facilities that are 20, 30 years old plus. That I think there's going to be a huge uptick in that. Not just in new construction, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of your product and SteelBlue product. See that on shameless, man. I'm telling you, on updated facilities, right? As they come in, because they're going to have to compete, as Jared said, with those older facilities. You're going to have to compete with those modernized facilities or those automated facilities. And when that happens, again, we just have a solution collectively as partners. We have a solution to fulfill that need in the market effectively, not rolling it out and being concerned.
Yeah. We call it doing it right. Right. That's one of our
right?
That's one of our big core values is doing it right.
That's right. I'm not going to get on an airplane that they're trying to figure out how to make it fly. So I don't want to get into an industry with automation that somebody's still trying to figure out, right? You guys have figured it out, and you're just expanding on what that looks like. And so, that I'm looking for that next transition or trend in the market.
So I've heard the anecdotes about it being oversaturated, and I think that that's an easy answer for people to say. It sounds just like a casual conversation, but I think one thing to keep in mind is there are almost as many storage facilities in the United States as there are fast food restaurants. I think it's within 2,000 or 3,000 per capita or something.
I've never heard that before. That's crazy.
Starbucks, Wendy's, McDonald's, and like one other one. If you match up some of the biggest performing public fast food restaurants in the U.S., self-storage, as far as the actual amount of self-storage facilities out there, they're neck and neck. And to me, fast food's doing just fine, right?
Yeah. We have 0 Starbucks where I live, but we've got 9 self-storage facilities within 2 miles of my house, right?
I bet they're doing just fine.
And they're all full.
But
right, they're all full. That's
it's
even
good.
the more insane part. Yeah.
the only way that we're going to be able to keep kind of penetrating the market, like you said, Bray, is just making sure that we have good partnerships and that the partnerships that we understand each other.
Yes,
SteelBlue and
sir.
OpenTech understand what we're trying to accomplish,
Hmm.
and we understand kind of what we need from each other as well. And I think that's really helpful.
So I want to talk about the other side of the business as well, which is auctions. What happens when folks obviously don't pay their bill? Stuff goes to auction. That's so there's a whole TV series about this storage, right? So I think it's interesting that you guys have this Power of 10 framework. You've actually been able to drive revenue for operators. And I think, at the end of the day, operators, they're business people. They need to squeeze out revenue any way they can. Talk to us a little about those findings, a little bit about storage treasures, and are you guys putting Storage Wars out of business? Is that what's going
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, and it's definitely, I think, considered, the dirty topic in self-storage. Nobody likes to talk about auctions. Nobody's in the business of self-storage to sell their tenants goods. But to your point, it's a business, and operators need a means to A, be able to get their unit back, and B, be able to recoup as much of that lost rent as they can from those tenants that aren't paying. It's funny. Storage Wars was actually kind of the how we started the evolution of our business. Storage Treasure spawned out of that originally. So yeah, a lot of people know it as this fun, flashy show, but it's something that happens every single day in this industry. We hosted just over 1 million auctions last year, and when I started doing this white paper, we were at about 200,000 a year. So I think the case for adoption is pretty clear, right? As we talk about operational efficiency and being able to do things with less time investment from your team, the case for online auctions is kind of undeniable. But I do think it's a technology that either because we don't like auctions or because it is so easy, we've taken for granted a little bit. And that's why we've started pushing this framework that we call the Power of 10. And that does come from our data. Again, 1 million auctions a year, we have access to a lot of data to be able to see what are those tiny things that an operator can do to make sure that they're getting the most money back that they can. And some of that's tied to our platform, right? We have the biggest bidder base in the industry. We do a ton of marketing to make sure that your units get seen. But there are some really small things that an operator can do to ensure they're getting the most of that money back. And just to give you one example, last year for auctions that posted 10 pictures versus 5, there was a 40% increase in average sale price. So think about that across your bottom line, right? If you're hosting, you are a little bit larger operator, if you're hosting hundreds of auctions in a year, how much of a difference is 40% in terms of rent recovery going to mean to your bottom line? And it takes maybe 5 more minutes. So when we talk about that power of 10, that's one of them. Make sure that you're posting 10 photos. Another is ensuring that you're listing that unit for at least 10 days. They used to say that storage bidders like to smell a unit. You got to give them time to dig in and smell the unit, look at the pictures. I know it's a terrible analogy, but those pictures are one of the ways they're smelling your unit. Auction categories and descriptions is another. Make sure that you're listing all of the different things that are in a unit. A lot of these bidders are using this as their business. So they're looking for very specific things. They have saved searches set up. They're getting emails tied to those saved searches. So if you're not taking the time to list out all of the different things that are in that unit, you're missing out on a huge pool of bidders that would drive those prices higher for you. So those are the main, I would say, of the power of 10. And again, it's 10 for a reason. 10 photos, 10 days. I would say 10 descriptions or categories if you can do it. And if you're not responsible for your auctions, make sure that whoever is being held accountable to following these best practices. We do a lot of education every month. So, if someone does want to learn more, they can hop onto one of those. We have a few different auctioneers and lien law experts who kind of walk through this data every month and what we're seeing. And we try to be super transparent with that so people can continue to learn from it.
Another piece that I wanted to dig into as well, so you guys, there was this finding about being able to collect money. People need to be able to pay at the end of the day, and they can't come always during business hours. It's just everyone works at the end of the day. Well, not everybody, but generally folks work, they can't get in, they're busy. And so therefore they need to be able to pay after hours, after business hours. And so I saw this interesting stat that was in there, and it showed that was like, I don't know exactly if this is 100% right, but it's like roughly a third of people are paying after hours or somewhere around there. I'm probably wrong, but
No, you're pretty close.
Yeah, 42%. Well, 42% of people are visiting
Visiting.
after hours.
35% of people, though, you were right, Jared. 35% of people are calling after hours to make their payment.
And that's fascinating to think about, that the operators that are not integrating these solutions are leaving that much money on the table, literally almost 40% of their business on the table. So maybe you guys just talk into a little bit of the impact that that's had, and how long have you, and just forgive me for being ignorant on this, but for somebody that wants to pay after hours, is that something that they're going to the website and they're going to the kiosk and doing? Like, how are they processing these payments without somebody there?
Mm-hmm. I think that specifically really comes down to the individual operator, right? What means have they made available for their tenants to make these payments after hours or to rent units after hours? But yes, to your point, we continue to see a significant chunk of people utilizing those tools to complete those transactions. So you already mentioned call center, right? 35% of those calls, and it's not an insignificant number. It's about almost 400,000 or payments made via the call center every year. So a third of those are calling after hours. If you don't have someone answering the phone, whether that's your person or a super cheap call center service that can be your after hours solution, you're missing those calls. And then that translates into outbound calls and time that your team spends on the phone trying to collect that revenue. Same for move-ins, right? 26% of kiosk move-ins last year were after hours. So when people are showing up at your facility, and I should clarify, we use Sunday through Saturday, 8 to 5 p.m. as our subset of in-office time. We know that's different for every operator, but just for the purpose of our analysis, that's kind of the parameters that we have set. So if you're not open on Sundays, it's going to be more for you. If you're not open as long, it's going to be more for you. It may be less depending on your open hours. But if you don't have someone at the property, or you don't have a means for them to rent, whether that's a website or a big phone number plastered on your facility, how are they interacting with your facility? Are they interacting with your facility, or are they driving up to your facility, seeing that no one's there, they don't have a way to rent, and going to your competitor? We talk in marketing a lot about how it's the first and last transaction that have the most impact on your tenants. So I think the thing that I like to hammer in, they really don't remember anything in between. They remember the first and the last. So if that first experience is hard, you've already lost them. And I know we talk a lot about reputation and word of mouth in this business being a big means for new business. It's one of the primary lead sources that I hear from operators over and over again. So just think, if you've made that first experience super seamless for prospective tenants, whether that's via the phone or via a kiosk or your website, however it may be, you've not only captured that tenant, but you're potentially capturing additional business via this person. I think it was 12% of new rentals for kiosks happened after hours as well last year. So that's 1 in 10, right? Just boil it down that way. If you're missing out on 1 in 10 renters, to Justin's point, you're losing $1,600 every time that happens.
And just to kind of loop back on something that Kim said, when you're looking at it as far as people who aren't able to pay, existing tenants who want to make a payment, right? We have a lot of different solutions that can help people with that. That's great. But if you don't implement them, what are you supposed to do? Because now what's happened is you have a tenant who's trying to pay. It's the first of the month and they're due. They can't, the office isn't open. Maybe they only have cash. Maybe they don't, maybe the facility doesn't have any technology in place, or a call center or something. Now, that next day, that tenant is calling because they got a late fee. And that late fee is $15, $20, $30. Who knows where they're at in their late fee cycle. And it's an argument with the facility manager going, well, I tried to pay and you weren't open and I want a refund or I want a credit for this. So the facility operations are having to expend all this time and energy in an argument or just trying to help de-escalate a tenant situation, which ultimately is a complete loss of time and labor time and revenue, right? So the more that a facility operator can put in place to help capture 42% of those visits, it's going to help them reduce a lot of their time that's spent, or their team's time that's spent, and frustration. And then again, ultimately, the tenant is the most important part of the whole equation. It's a frictionless experience for them to interact with the property because they know, okay, I was at work super late, and maybe they didn't get a lunch break that day, and they didn't have time to call. They know they can go online. or they know they can call and come into our call center. They could use Storage Gene. We can put a payment link inside of our mobile app for the access control. They just click on it and pay, right? Implementing these types of things to help your tenants with their better experience at the facility also helps with labor and staff and just for everybody to have a better time, essentially.
Yeah. So we have one operator, and I don't remember where they're located, but they are located in a factory town. They have one central manager who oversees about 8 facilities. He fields most of the phone calls, but they know that because of this factory schedule, people are working swing shifts. They're working 7 to 7. The only time they're available to call is in those hours where he's not available. So he only uses us for that window.
Yeah.
So again, it's just, I think, looking at your tenant base, looking at your property and understanding where there might be gaps.
That's fascinating. It's just a testament to all the data that you guys are able to provide to the operators at the end of the day and the comprehensive offering that you guys have here. So I know that I've kept you for, quite some time. I wanted to talk about your Internet of Everything solution because I am a nerd on that. And I've been into that since 2017. And I learned about the Internet of Things. And because I was investing in a lot of crypto projects that were basically promising logistics solutions with the Internet of Things. And it's obviously, grown since then. And maybe, Justin, if you could just really touch briefly on your IOE solution and just the impact that it has for operators. Because I think a lot of folks, when they hear IOE, they go, what the heck is that?
Yeah, IOE is a broad concept, right? It's that next evolution of IoT. So there's 4 pillars to IOE. It's people, process, data, and things. I can't believe I remembered all of that. And so it's what it takes from that original concept of IoT, which is just this kind of multiverse of technology talking to each other, is it introduces the human element to it. So IOE encompasses people. The data end of that pillar is actually the processes that are laid out by the business, by us, and how we set up all of these different pieces of technology and services so that way the person can interact with it properly. And I think that gets reflected pretty well across our product line that is IOE, because we have that's part of our access control system. That's smart locks. That's unit alarms and water sensors and all these cool little cameras and things that we're doing, or security monitoring services we're working with. It brings it all together under this one umbrella, and it puts it in a centralized location that an operator can see and interact with. And it expands it into the IOE universe because it allows the tenants and the operators or the managers, who are the people pillar of this, to interact with all of our devices and all of our applications and all of our services all under one roof. That's the most general way I could describe it.
Well, thank you for musing me on that one. And so as we're just getting finished up, what are you guys excited about for the second half of 2025 and even into 2026? I know you guys are always working on so many wonderful things. And then also just for folks that want to get started with you guys, how can they work with you and where can they find you and connect with you online?
Sure. I'm going to steal Justin's. We've got some big smart lock rollouts happening overseas. We've seen some pretty good adoption over there. So I know he's actually about to leave to head over to that facility and get that one outfitted. I'm personally pretty excited to see that come to life. We've been talking about it for a while now, as well as we're rolling out a new facility management solution here at the end of the year. So we'll be sharing more about that soon. Anything to add on excitement, Justin?
So there's a lot of growth that's happening globally, right? I think we've gone from saying we're an international company to we're a global company now. We're in Australia, we're in the UK, we're in Europe. So there's a lot of projects that are getting off of the ground right now that are happening on the other side of the world that I'm really excited about, that are launching. And that's really new facilities and new operators who are coming into the self-storage space. That are coming from other industries going, that looks fun. I want to do that. And I want to do something really cool with it. Yeah. And so we get to have those conversations. I'm excited about, kind of as the ink dries from those interactions, that we'll be able to start helping with their building process. As far as the IOE side goes, we do have a couple of very special products we're working on. We'll call them Product X and Product Y. And I can't really talk much about them, but we really feel that they're going to revolutionize the way that an operator can view the activity at their facility and kind of really elevate the security of their facility. So there's still a lot to come from that side. I'm really excited about it, and I think we may have to revisit towards the end of the year and see how far we've come. We'll do another show together.
Let's do it.
For sure. Super easy to reach us though, right? We have 6 dedicated reps. So regardless of your region, well, I say 6, now that we're global, it's about 8 dedicated reps. So regardless of where you're at, we will have someone dedicated to be able to help you. So you can visit our website at opentechalliance.com. You can give us a call at 1-800-481-7459. If you are interested in the white paper, it's super easy to find. Just go on our website under the resources tab.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Kim and Justin, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
We're really excited about the partnership and collaboration between our companies, and I'm really excited to see that flourish over time. And just congratulations to all the wonderful things you guys have been working on. You guys have been kicking butt. So looking forward to more of that in the future.
Thank you. I'm glad we're here. I'm excited for what we're working on moving forward together with both of our organizations. I think it's going to be really fun.
Agreed. Yeah, we so appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys, and I think just across the board, your entire team's been great to work with, and I think we found a great partner in each other for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. Thank you so much, you guys.